Hello.
Tihe Māori ora. Ko ngā toki mata whaurua te waka. Ko ngā puhi me te rarawa ngā iwi. Hoki anga te wahapu. Puke haua te maunga. Tau kahawai te awa. Ko ngāti kaharau me ngāti hau ngā hapu. Te piti te marae. Ko tūhaia kerepeti rawa ko hohi pine te wake o ku mātua tūpuna. Ko Reginald Murphy rawa ko morehu kerepeti o ku mātua. Nō reira, ko Jacinthia Murphy tōku ingoa. Ngā mihi mahana, ngā mihi aroha kia koutou. Te mea tuarua māku, tēnei au e mihi atu kia koutou, kua tatu mai I raro tuanui o tātou zui Taha Māori. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I acknowledge everyone who has gathered today. Kei te mihi kia koutou katoa kua tatu mai I roto I te kaupapa nei, nau mai haere mai, whakatau mai. Haria mai o koutou tini ai tua. I welcome you all to this kaupapa, and I welcome those you have loved and bring with you. Rātou kua wehi atu ki tua o te arai, haere koutou. Haere ki te pō nui, te pō roa, te pō pauri. He moi, haere. We bring together those that we mourn, those who have passed on, yours and mine. We farewell them, haere. Tātou ngā kanohi ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. To all the living eyes, those we can see, greetings once, greetings twice, greetings 3 times.
Why can't I hear?
Morena, ata Māori e kia koutou katoa. Just firstly, you'll probably notice that many of you has come in as the very famous Megan Means. That's a little hiccup in our registration process, but we'll iron all that out. And you can rename yourself at any time, unless you'd like to be the infamous Megan Means, of course. But welcome. In Taha Māori, we'll be tackling our pronunciation. More specifically, we'll confront those, tricky vowels, those tricky Māori vowel sounds, which in essence will boost your confidence by, I would say, 75% in the use of Te Reo, especially in our liturgies from our prayer book. One of the most challenging things you will encounter will be the pronunciation of the vowels, and I think many of you will agree. Then there's the learning of the words too. So much pressure. Understandably, if it seems more appealing to not use Te Reo at all, that saves getting into trouble. But I encourage you, bear with me, and let's get our sound around the vowels. I'll just pop my disclaimer in now. I'm not a reo teacher. I am not a reo teacher. and I'm not a translator either. I may not hold distinguished academic qualifications. However, what I can offer is a passion to enable and to encourage you to engage more with learning how to use Te Reo safely, respectfully, and confidently. Our primary resource to help us achieve this is within our beloved prayer book. We'll learn a little about the translations, translators, some history, and where resources are available also. In this first 7-part series, we'll also engage with the land of the long white cloud, a very provocative doco series, sure to push some of our buttons. The series was based on the celebrations in 2019 about Captain Cook's arrival and how some individuals felt about that. The series director, Jo Randerson, will join us one week to share her kōrero whakaaro with us also. We may go a little over time today in this first session, but please be assured that from next week, we'll keep more closer to our 1-hour brief. I know you're all busy. Okay, so now here's the wero or the challenge from Te Tau Rāwhiri to do a mihi for Waitangi Day 2021. Now, many of you may have received this invitation, but titiro mai, let's see. This may be you in 2022.
I don't think we can hear these videos. No.
Cynthia, if you can replay the slide, please, with the sound.
And of course, with every piece of technology, there's always hiccups. I can't help you with the sound. Everything's working all right at our end, so it might be something you need to play around with on your devices. But anyway, here we are. Here are the vowel sounds. And I know it sounds very kohanga reo. I know it sounds like, oh gosh, we already know this, but I reiterate that if we can get the vowel sounds down packed, you will be 75% in your confidence to use Te Reo from the prayer book. So a, e, I, o, u. And with that, I just want to say that the vowel sounds A, E, I, O, U, which many of you are familiar with, A, E, I, O, U, they're not invited to Taha Māori. The vowel sounds invited to Taha Māori are A, E, I, O, U. Here they are with the macrons, which is a longer sound. A, E, I, O, U. And there's, you know, some of the words where you will hear that elongated vowel sound. Now, many of you already know that the prayer book, the new edition of the prayer book, certainly now has the macrons. The online version of the prayer book also has all the macrons on all the Māori or Te Reo in the book. So when you encounter these two, the short sound and the long sound, you'll be familiar with it. You can always call back on this video or this in YouTube later on. Can you check that we've clicked the sound, the video sound? It's not. Ah, is that what it is? Can you go out of this and check that we clicked that? Okay. I think there is a problem. There is a problem. And I'm so sorry. Just a sec. Let's just go back and try a couple of slides.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora te whānau.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koe.
Kia ora koutou.
Can you raise your hand to say
Kia ora te whānau, ko Jack tōku ingoa. Ko Hemi Kelly tōku ingoa.
Ko Eyes of a Kore tōku ingoa.
Ko Rahira tōku ingoa.
Ko Hora tōku ingoa.
Ko Ashley Bloomfield tōku ingoa.
Ko Rhea Hall tōku ingoa, no tauranga moana o ku tupuna.
No Rotorua o mātou tupuna.
No Texas o ku tipuna.
No Italia me parani o ku tipuna.
No Te Reo o ku tipuna.
No Pilipini o ku tipuna.
No Ngāti Maniapoto o ku tipuna.
No Piritania o ku tipuna. Kei te noho au ki te raki whai whenua.
Kei te noho au ki o te poti.
Kei te noho au ki Poihākina.
Kei te noho au ki te whanganuiata.
Te whanganuiata.
Kei ni o ka hau e noho ana.
Kei te noho au ki Tāmaki Makaurau.
Tāmaki Makaurau.
Ki Tāmaki Makaurau.
Kei Tāmaki Makaurau a hau e noho ana I tēnei wā.
Kia ora, ko Tingana tōku ingoa, no Ingarangi o ku tipuna, kei Tūranganui a Kiwa tōku kāinga.
Kia kaha Te Reo koutou mā.
Kia kaha Te Reo Māori.
Kia kaha Te Reo Māori.
Kia kaha Te Reo Māori.
Pukana!
My humble apologies. Just one flick of a switch makes all the difference. So my apologies, you missed out on the earlier audios. So where were we? We've got ordinary vowel sounds and macronized vowel sounds. So if you learn these, trust me, learn them and your confidence will build hugely. During the occupation of the land out at Ihumatao, efforts to enable and entertain non-Reo speaking supporters was a way in which to ensure that they were considered or they felt like that they were part of us. And I'd like you to just watch this little clip. Some of you have already experienced it at Auckland's Synod last year.
In my Māori, in my
ki mai, ki mai, ki mai, Māori, ki mai.
Ki mai, ki mai, ki mai, Māori, ki mai, ki mai, ki mai, ki mai, Māori, ki mai, ki mai, ki mai, ki mai, Māori, ki mai, ki mai, ki mai,
Ki mai, Māori.
ki mai,
So there's a little ditty for you perhaps to learn, and that became a daily event out at Ihumātao over the many, many weeks and months ahead. And so we have a, e, I, o, u, but then you have to couple them with another vowel. And I know, it's really hard. So here they are, coupled with other vowels, every possible combination of vowels with vowels. And in some cases, there's 3 vowels together, but not as common. So we've got ai, ai, ao, au, ea, ei, eo, eu, ia, ie, io, iu, oa, oe, oi, ou, ua, ue, ui. Now, hang on, we've got one more technical hiccup. Just your video so I can see your face. That's what it is. I was told to put my face up. So that's one combination. And then there's ia, ie, io, iu, oa, oe, oi, ou, ua, ue, ui. So there's a whole lot of combinations of vowels together. And sit down, practice them, go through them, give every vowel its own mana. Give it its own mana. And then when you get words from the prayer book, you'll see them all together. There's heaps and heaps and heaps of them. Tātou, which is tātou. Tātou. So go through the prayer book, have a look at all the vowels that are together. Use this as a guide. The English words on the right-hand side are just what they actually mean. So ua is rain. So if I want to say it's raining, e ua ana, I would say. It's raining. So all those combinations of vowels, learn them, get them down packed. One of the ones, of course, that many of us probably didn't even think about. Aotearoa. 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 One of the hardest letters that you'll have, and I get it, no, there's no English equivalent to help me describe it, is the R, the rolling of the R. It's tricky. So it's not Aotearoa, it's not Aotearoa, it's Aotearoa. Roa. It's the tongue up on the top palate. Aotearoa. So it's curled and up on the top palate. Again, that's going to be practice on your part. And that's that's another hard one. Vowels and that R. Then there's the NG, the ng, used in singing. If I was going to use the English word, it's singing, ringing. thinking. So those letters, the R and the NG, plus the vowels, trust me, you'll have 75% of your confidence built up just in that alone. I just want to take us now to what we'll be going through in this series. These are all the Māori Eucharistic liturgies in the prayer book on page 404. Many of you are already familiar with them, I realise that. 476, 494, he tikanga anō, and the 499 completely in Te Reo Māori. In the coming weeks, we will unpack those one by one. We have the Tangi liturgy on page 826, the Takahi Whare on 871, blessing of a house, and the Hura Kohatu, the unveiling or memorial on page 881. Now, Te Reo appears also in the iriri or the baptism, marina, marriage, and in other places. And more recently, for those of you who have the new prayer book, you'll see all the latest rāranga, me ngā inoi or sentences and collects are also now all in Te Reo Māori, all macronized. So there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of resources for you, and I encourage you to use them. There's only 2 himene in the book, to my knowledge. I don't know any others. I could be wrong. I might stand to be corrected in coming weeks. And that's on page 174, Tamanako Māori, and you heard that playing when you came into the room, just prior to 10 a.m. And Mā Te Māori, I couldn't find an Anglican version on page 177. No, it's not about having an Anglican version, but I couldn't find one. So they're the 2 that are in the prayer book. But the one I want to take you to right now is the one on page 154. Oh, sorry. Then there's the invitation. Yes, this is another area that I encourage you. There are already some people using the invitation, or the karanga as we call it, up to kaihapa, up to communion. So where we say, come, God's people. It's in Te Reo Māori in the prayer book, and you'll find them on page 489 and 510 in the prayer book. Karanga to communion. But the one I want to take you to just right now and this week is poi. Now, many of you probably already know that it's there and it exists. It's on page 154 of the Midday Canticle, written by Taha Ihaka, and it talks of the missionaries, Māori missionaries, that he's penned in this canticle, in this mōtetea. So, whakarongo mai.
Kia mau, titiro he ngai wi te kapu takuringa he taonga tēnei nā ngā tūpuna he poi, he poi, he poi hei. Poi politia, poi takawiri taupatu patu, taupatu patu, taupatu patu ko te tau. Patu patu taku poi, kārere taku poi, here tika atu ana kātau ki ngā pui. Kei reira te toka, kei rangi hoa, kei o ihira, ko te toka tēnā, I paua I hoa I te rongo pai rā I kamau. Hei whakakloria, te atu I runga laua kamau, te rongo ki Aotearoa, tēnā anō rā, ko ana pura pura I rui ara I roto I ngā iwi, ka tupu ka hua hua nei. Piti rawa atu koe ki a rau kaua koro tawai toa hei mātā mua kei roto wanganui ko te tauri. Ka tae ngā rongo ki ngā tiru anui ko mani he rara ko kere opa hoki. I whakamate nei mō te whakapono e kātau. Ka rere taku poe ki te taira whiti kei rerenga ki ana ko taumata kura kei mātātua ko ngā kukura kei te arawa ko I haiwa. Kei roto ka hungunu ko te werara e te wera. Ka tuhi ka rapa kauira te rangi tui ho nei e toia te waka. Te utanga orunga ko te aroha paihere tia mai te rangi Māori e au e hei.
Land of the Long White Clouds, a 7-part series, tells the stories of white New Zealanders, that's the Radio New Zealand description, by the way, who are confronting our colonial past and present, 250 years after Cook's arrival. Our government poured millions of dollars into commemorating Captain Cook's arrival, but why were we doing this? Many Pākehā were unhappy with the celebration of colonisation and demanded that some start to take responsibility. Titiro mai, 2 episodes, 1 and 2.
This year marks the 250th anniversary of the first face-to-face meeting between tangata whenua and European sailors.
Captain James Cook's ship Endeavour coming to our shores for Tuia 250, the reenactment of Cook's journey.
But critics say spending $23 million to mark such a divisive moment is wrong.
Many years ago, we probably wouldn't even been close to these conversations. It's hard as it is. There's people out there, I can just say the word treaty and their nostrils start to flare up. We are the problem. We always have been, since Cook arrived.
Yeah, who decided that we should do this?
I understand the resistance to commemorations of Cook's landing, or as some say, of that invasion and of that violence.
That term Cook discovered New Zealand just shocks me, that people could think that and not seeing that the land had already been very well discovered, thank you.
I don't know about that word commemorations and what we're actually doing and when we're just celebrating and glorifying something, because I think that whole heroising is absolutely wrong.
He arrived all right. But what happened after that has been horrendous for Māori. If we don't understand that in our hearts, then we'll never really move on as a nation, or as Pākehā, to put it in context as to the consequences of that.
Lead in the sun. Hello. Oh, hello, hello, hello. When I first made my way down to New Zealand in 1769, I was told to go and find the great unknown southern continent. Everyone was looking for it at the time, you know, the Dutch, the Spanish, the French. Hate the French. And basically the way it worked was the first one to get there and pop their flag down wins, all theirs. You know, that's colonisation. Pop your flag down, bam, that's mine.
Inherent in this coming together in the process of Cook is this process of colonisation, which is a violent process aimed at destroying Indigenous people.
I don't think non-Māori realise the impact of colonisation on Māori and on themselves, on ourselves. When we don't even have an awareness, how can we then begin to take honourable action?
My ancestors came here, we took over, we murdered and plundered, we set up an agreement to try and work together and ignored that, because you try to give yourself permission about the past. Don't blame me, I didn't take the land, I didn't stop the language, it's not my fault. What I've done is maintained my privilege by ignoring the past.
It takes strength to go past guilt. And maybe it's helpful to realise that it's a self-indulgent excuse, in a way. It's good to be guilty when you first find out, I think, but to see it as a stage and not to stay there, and to change from guilt to responsibility.
I still do kind of struggle with the whole Pākehā paralysis kind of thing, like, oh, what if I, do something wrong?
Even just labelling it is a really important step, because once you've labelled it, then you can get over it and you can actually do something useful with it.
We've got to find a better way, a more caring way. We have to challenge ourselves.
The treaty is inspiring to me. It's a blueprint for how we can work together. And so that for me is the vision.
If we honoured Te Treaty, we'd address so many of the issues that are facing this country in terms of the injustice and imbalance that we see. And so why wouldn't we do that? Because it'll create a better Aotearoa for everybody.
We have to be able to believe that we can do this, and history will show us that we can.
Anyway, that's all hindsight, To look back in the past, wonder what you could have done differently. I suppose I'm trying to think about how to incorporate hindsight into my day-to-day business, Sort of look back into the past and see what it informs in your actions in the future. Sort of like looking backwards in order to move forward. You're looking backwards in order to move forward. Right, so, okay, need a little bit of practice at that, don't I? Ha. Well, anyway, come on, let's go.
By 1890, 90% of Ngāi Tahu were landless. In that same period, my Pākehā ancestor could win lands in a running race. As Pākehā, we don't have the tools to understand the now because we don't understand our history. I identify as Pākehā. What that means is people of white European descent, particularly coloniser descent. So it's a conflicted identity in that sense. Some of the stories of our ancestors carry that conflict that we sit with as Pākehā New Zealanders. That conflict of wanting it to be a different history than it actually is. It was really interesting to me when Mum told me about my ancestors, Joseph and Bessie Doyle, who had this positive relationship with Horikiri and Tēnekere Tairoa. Horikiri Tairoa was an MP for Southern Māori and was travelling a lot, and so my ancestors used to look after their property. My great-great-grandfather was known as an outspoken supporter of Māori representation in Parliament in the late 1800s, and I think it came, obviously, from that friendship. So there were people who were supporters, and one of my ancestors was a supporter of Māori representation and Māori rights, and that seemed like a positive, honourable thing. It was then really interesting for me digging deeper and finding my great-great-grandfather's obituary, and in that it said that he was a good runner, and that one of the more memorable prizes that he won for winning a running race were 2 parcels of land on the Canterbury Plains. That was Ngāi Tahu lands, and this was in the late 1800s. By 1890, 90% of Ngāi Tahu were landless. They either didn't have any land or didn't have enough land for economic survival. And they're the very lands that his friend, Horikiri Tairoa, is fighting for justice in relation to. That challenged me to think about what I was needing or wanting my ancestors to be and what narrative I was wanting to create. Whatever I find out about my ancestors, the thing for me is about what am I doing about all of this. It was actually, in a place of privilege in a fourth-year paper at Canterbury University that I first learnt about Te Reo Waitangi. I was pissed off that I hadn't learnt that stuff. We can't understand Te Reo itself if we don't understand this context of hundreds of years of settlement of tangata whenua, and that they had all the systems in place of law, of education, health, and then understanding the process that followed, which was a complete disregard of Te Reo and the process of colonisation. I just felt like it was so critical to have that understanding. And so then I went into adult education, where there was a need to communicate that understanding to a broader audience. So when we turn to thinking about honouring Te Reo, it's about the restoration of balance. Well, it's always been really clear that my responsibility is to be speaking to my own people, because some of the big blocks to a healthy society are Pākehā blocking Māori being able to pursue their own health and well-being. Obviously, I do stuff because I want to shift our understanding as Pākehā and our work to honour Te Reo, but within that, I don't step out of my Pākehā privilege. This is Grain Road, where I grew up in Doyleston. My great-great-grandfather arrived in 1864. He was a 21-year-old Scottish farm labourer. Not long after that, he purchased land on the Canterbury Plains, land that tangata whenua had had relationships with for hundreds of years before. The area that he purchased was named Doyleston, after him, by him, for him. There wasn't the conversation around, well, did this place already have a name? I don't know what happened with those lands. We don't own it. It says in his obituary he didn't give them back. Whether he did any restoration around that, I don't know. I got to grow up on these lands actually having no idea about any of the history. There's material privilege that comes from growing up on stolen lands. There's the privilege of the kids in the school books having the same colour skin as me, the same types of names. In the media, my people, Pākehā, being positively portrayed. And that's the privilege, that you become the normal. There's a whole loss of understanding Māori ways of being in this place. Hundreds of years of ways of doing things that I grew up with no knowledge of. But the fact that I can succeed in a society without that knowledge, that's how privilege works. We all have a responsibility in terms of restoring balance in Aotearoa to do what we can. Things like learning about where your people came from, how they got to be here. Thinking about, where do I have influence? What can I do amongst my family, amongst my community? It is about challenging your own patterns of thinking and understanding. I can't change the story of my ancestors, but I can try to build a different future.
No mai hoki mai. No doubt there are some mixed feelings about this opener of The Long White Cloud and its series. This is only This is only the start of a deeper kōrero, a deeper talk and sharing of whakaaro, your thoughts, in the coming weeks. So let's break out now to consider the series and any insights you might have to offer us when you come back. You'll be aware that there are facilitators. Please be aware there'll be facilitators in your rooms, and we thank Liam, Paul, Gendy, Julian, and Kim, and possibly myself. So we're going to send you off into rooms, into chat rooms, breakout rooms, and we'll bring you back in 10 minutes' time. Kia ora. Okay, you should be able to hear me now. No mai hoki mai. Thank you for participating in the breakout rooms. And of course, 10 minutes is never enough, is it? You know, oh. We were just warming up. So the facilitators of the rooms, could I ask you, please, we'll start with Paul. If you would unmute yourself, Paul, and just give us the insight from your group. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. What a wonderful group and really, really good insights. It's hard just to pick one, but a lot was around our privilege and ability to succeed without realizing the privilege, the sea we're swimming in, and how do we restore a balance, and how do we challenge those who refuse to acknowledge their privilege. We've got this Western identity of collective privilege, and so how do we make inroads, and how do we acknowledge the walking backwards into the future? How do we embrace other worldviews that will be mutually affirming, I think so. And challenge to learn our whakapapa, where do I come from, where do I fit in, and how do, I suppose, enhancing mana here. And I've encouraged the people to put in chats. If I've missed it, I got it completely wrong, then you'll Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Group 2, I think it is, for sharing those whakaaro with us. Could I ask Julian, please, to report back? Unmute yourself.
Certainly. Our group, everyone raised their hand with no abstentions, that people expressed that they felt affected in their own way by the film. But the simple insight that we agreed on was through understanding and encounter, in parentheses, with Māori culture and customs, is the way that we can move forward. And that's it. At the moment, given 10 minutes, it's has to begin with understanding and encounter in order to move forward. That's our group.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you very much. That's the whakaaro from Group 1. Gendi, please unmute yourself.
It's Jendi here.
Oh, Jendi, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We had Liam with us, so I'm not quite sure what happened to Liam's group. Okay, cool. We ran out of time, so I'm summarising on behalf of everyone. There was a range of emotions, I guess, from kind of uncomfortable and challenged and where to now? You know, what do we do with the guilt to move forward? But maybe some guilt is appropriate, even if it's not personal guilt. A couple of people from other countries, you know, more recently had a different kind of take on a few things too. But then it's time for us as Pākehā to probably embrace our role to move this forward, you know, and how to actually put some skin to that. We're in the complexities of it. It's all we kind of got this, you know, yeah, where to now.
Where to now. Wonderful words. Thank you, Jendi. Thanks very much, Group 4. Was there something more, Jendi? No, all done. Thank you. And Liam, we'll excuse you for migrating. We are in lockdown, by the way, you know, migrating to other places where you might have to go into quarantine. All good. Kim B, Group 5, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, tēnā koe, kia ora. I think much of what's been said already we canvassed in our group, and there was a willingness for everyone to acknowledge that that section, the video, had an impact on us all. What kept coming back to was the two young men at the end who were sitting at the table. And in some sense, it's quite remarkable that they were able to voice what most of us were feeling, is that the idea of how do you get past the guilt, past the sense of privilege that we have, and by naming it, was they were saying naming it is the way forward. But there was a sense in which all of us felt that we were able to move forward if we embarked on the journey, as Paul was saying. And I think that's really what we were getting to. We had a mixed group of different people from different countries as well, and engaging with some of this for the first time. And that's quite interesting. So that's where we were at.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Group 5, for your participation in that. I filled in for Liam in Group 3, and we certainly echo everything that's already been said. One of the things that came out of that, which might be a little bit different to what we've already heard, was at some point, should we be forgiving ourselves? Should we forgive ourselves? And then from there, we might be able to move forward, as it were. And as a starting point. So if we forgive ourselves and all that's happened and our heritage and our privilege and all of that, if we just forgive ourselves, then we're actually able to move into a place of desire, of wanting to learn, of wanting to do more, and of wanting to take more responsibility as Pākehā to make a difference in the future. So that was kind of our insight there. Of course, 10 minutes, as I say, is never enough. It's never enough. But thank you so much, everybody, for engaging with that. It's been a really, really good first series for us. And there's more to come. Of course, there's more of those discussions for us to have. Next week, of course, we won't have my pepeha. We won't have all that stuff at the beginning. So we'll have a little bit more time to engage more deeper and more in-depth in our breakout rooms, etc. And to engage with the liturgy, to engage with the vowel sounds, to engage what this is all about, Taha Māori, and of course encouraging and enabling you to use all the Te Reo Māori in the prayer book and being able to incorporate that into your weekly services, into your bedside vigils, into your pastoral ministry roles, be you clergy or laity. There's a role for all of us in the church and in ministry. So I'd like to leave you there at the moment, and I'd like us to close with a Karakia Whakamutunga, a closing prayer, and the grace. Please feel free to say it with me, but can I ask that you remain muted for the purpose of recording? Just remain muted and say it along with me. The words and everything are up on the screen. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou āreki o ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua. Me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, ake, ake. Āmene. If you have any feedback, anything at all that you'd like to forward to myself, Megan, please just send it to that email address or pop things in the chat box and we'll save that. And as I say, engage with that sometime in the future. So all feedback to lsm@aucklandanglican.org.nz. Ka kitea koutou next Thursday, the 19th, 10 a.m, same time, noho ora mai, kia ora. And feel free to stay on after this if you'd like a casual kōrero, ka pai, ka pai. Or have any queries, pārtai questions, we'll do a separate recording so you can now unmute yourself at that point. Nō reira e te whānau, tēnā koutou katoa. I couldn't hear that last little bit.